In 1999, the Parkers turned family chaos into outrageous comedy that felt warm, familiar, and safe. But by 2026, the truth behind the laughter is far more devastating. Many of the cast members faced lonely lives, devastating illnesses, early deaths, or quiet financial struggles once the spotlight faded. This is the side of their story the sitcom never showed, and the world never expected. Monique as Nikki Parker. Monique was born on December 11, 1967, in Woodlawn, Maryland, United States. At 32 years old, she played Nikki Parker, the loud, fearless, and fiercely devoted single mother in The Parkers, 1999. Nikki's unapologetic humor and emotional honesty anchored the series, giving the show its pulse and turning it into a defining sitcom of its era. Off-camera, the same intensity followed her home. Monique's marital life unfolded through turbulence and public scrutiny. Her first marriage to Calvin Watkins, later described as abusive, then her marriage to Mark Jackson from 1997 to 2001, and finally her 2006 marriage to Sidney Hicks, with whom she has twin sons. As her visibility grew through mainstream television and later dramatic acclaim in Precious, 2009, the couple's openly discussed open marriage became a flashpoint, drawing relentless media attention that magnified private strain during the most demanding phases of her career. That pressure soon showed up in her body. Years of battling obesity led Monique to undergo weight loss surgery in 2010, a decision she framed as survival rather than image. Alongside physical challenges, she has spoken candidly about long-term depression tied to childhood sexual abuse, explaining how unresolved trauma continued to shape her self-worth even as she remained professionally visible through projects like Almost Christmas, 2016, and high-profile stand-up specials that demanded emotional exposure night after night. Yet the story does not end in retreat. As of 2026, Monique is 59 years old, still working in stand-up comedy, acting, and independent production. With an estimated net worth of around $13 million, her finances reflect both hard-won success and years of legal and industry conflict, including disputes with major studios. She remains a polarizing but resilient presence, active, outspoken, and defined by the personal cost behind the spotlight. Countess Vaughn as Kim Parker. Countess Vaughn was born on August 8, 1978, in Idabel, Oklahoma, United States. At 21 years old, she played Kim Parker, the naive, big-hearted, and comically insecure daughter in The Parkers, 1999. Kim's vulnerability softened Nikki's force, creating the emotional rhythm that helped the series sustain its popularity after branching off from Moesha. When the laughter faded, relationships became the fault line. Vaughn married Joseph James in 2002, and the marriage ended in 2005 amid allegations of domestic violence, leaving deep emotional scars. As her acting momentum slowed after the success of Moesha and the Parkers, a later engagement to David Whitten, with whom she has a daughter, also unraveled, followed by public accusations and legal tension that further destabilized her private life. Health issues then compounded the damage. Diagnosed with a thyroid disorder in the early 2000s, Vaughn endured rapid weight gain and chronic fatigue that limited opportunities in an appearance-driven industry. She later revealed vitiligo and significant hair loss caused by long-term wig use, conditions that intensified depression and pushed her further from mainstream acting, even as earlier accomplishments like 227 and her NAACP Image Award-winning work continued to define public memory. Today, Countess Vaughn is 48 years old, living largely outside Hollywood while making occasional appearances and prioritizing health and family. Her estimated net worth of around $900,000 reflects a career launched with extraordinary promise and reshaped by illness and personal upheaval, leaving a legacy defined as much by endurance as by the laughter audiences remember. Dorian Wilson as Professor Stanley Ogilvy. Dorian Wilson was born on July 5, 1963, in Lompoc, California, United States. At 36 years old, he played Professor Stanley Ogilvy, the handsome, short-tempered college professor constantly pursued by Nicky in The Parkers, 1999. His sharp sarcasm and restrained frustration acted as a counterweight to Nicky's explosive energy, creating one of the show's most memorable comedic dynamics. That on-screen tension mirrored quieter pressures in his private life. Wilson married Joanne Wilson in 1986, and together they raised 2 children, but years of career uncertainty slowly eroded the relationship. As The Parkers brought him visibility alongside earlier television work such as Dream On, the struggle to maintain momentum after the sitcom era created financial and emotional strain, culminating in their divorce in 2018 after more than 3 decades together. The stress did not stop at relationships. Although Wilson has not disclosed any major physical illness, he has spoken about the psychological weight of the industry, auditions that dried up, roles that never materialized, and the shift from leading visibility to scattered appearances. Guest work on shows like In the Cut and voice roles later in his career reflected adaptation rather than triumph, as professional pressure gradually reshaped his sense of purpose and stability. As of 2026, Dorian Wilson is 63 years old and continues acting, primarily in television and voice projects. With an estimated net worth of around $2 million, built steadily from decades of consistent work rather than blockbuster success, he remains professionally active yet personally reserved, an actor still standing, even as the spotlight moved on. Jenna von Oÿ as Stevie Van Lowe. Jenna von Oÿ was born on May 2, 1977, in Danbury, Connecticut, United States. At 22 years old, she played Stevie Van Lowe, Kim Parker's intelligent, sarcastic best friend in The Parkers, 1999. Stevie's wit and grounded perspective sharpened the show's humor, often voicing what others could not, and giving the series its ironic edge. As her career matured, personal balance became the central challenge. Von Oÿ married Brad Bratcher in 2010, and together they had 2 daughters. But the marriage eventually ended after years of strain linked to competing priorities. While her earlier fame from Blossom and later work during The Parkers kept her recognizable, the difficulty of sustaining a traditional acting trajectory pushed her to reassess both ambition and family life. That reassessment was accompanied by emotional pressure rather than illness. After stepping back from Hollywood's pace, Von Oÿ confronted stress tied to body image after childbirth and the uncertainty of reinventing herself outside acting. Writing and voice work, including projects like A Goofy Movie and later books on motherhood, became outlets for control and expression as she navigated identity beyond the roles that once defined her. In 2026, Jenna von Oÿ is 49 years old and works primarily as a writer and occasional performer, living far from the daily demands of the entertainment industry. With an estimated net worth of around $1.5 million earned through acting, voice work, and publishing, her life today is quieter and more deliberate, marked not by disappearance, but by a conscious decision to step away from the noise that once shaped her. Ken Lawson as Thaddeus Tyrell T. Radcliffe. Ken Lawson was born on January 19, 1976, in Atlanta, Georgia, United States. At 23 years old, he played Thaddeus Tyrell T. Radcliffe, the smooth, flirtatious ladies' man and close friend of Kim and Stevie in The Parkers, 1999. T's easy charm and comic swagger added youthful energy to the ensemble, balancing romance and humor as the show settled into its long run. As the spotlight grew, stability proved harder to secure. Lawson never married publicly, but the pressure of sustaining momentum after becoming a series regular weighed heavily as opportunities narrowed once The Parkers ended. Continued television work, including appearances on In the Cut and small film roles such as Malibu's Most Wanted, kept him visible but underscored how difficult it was to escape the shadow of a defining sitcom role. professional stress gradually redirected his focus rather than his health. Without major awards or long-term contracts, Lawson shifted time toward music and production while continuing to accept selective acting work, including later projects like Lumina and recurring television appearances. The strain was less physical than psychological, managing expectations, inconsistent income, and the quiet erosion of mainstream attention. By 2026, Ken Lawson is 50 years old and remains intermittently active in acting and music. With an estimated net worth of around $500,000, his career reflects persistence rather than reinvention. A performer still working, still adapting, and still tied to the role that introduced him to millions. Yvette Wilson as Andell Wilkerson. Yvette Wilson was born on March 6, 1964, in Los Angeles, California, United States. At 35 years old, she played Andell Wilkerson, Nikki's fiercely loyal best friend and neighborhood anchor in The Parkers, 1999. Andell's grounded warmth and sharp wit gave the series emotional balance, extending a character audiences already loved from Moesha. Away from the camera, marriage unfolded under growing strain. Wilson married record producer Jerome Harry in 2001, and while the union offered companionship, it soon became overshadowed by mounting personal and professional pressures. As her familiar presence from Moesha and the Parkers struggled to translate into larger roles, she turned toward stand-up comedy, film work like Friday, and managing Fat Daddy Records to stay afloat. Illness then reshaped every part of her life. Wilson battled kidney disease for years, enduring dialysis and a transplant, while continuing to work through pain and exhaustion. That fight intensified when cervical cancer spread throughout her body, forcing friends and fans to raise money for medical care as her condition worsened, even after her final screen appearances. Yvette Wilson died on June 14, 2012, at the age of 48, from cervical cancer complicated by kidney disease. She was cremated, with no public funeral held, and left behind an estimated net worth of around $500,000, a modest sum compared to the joy she brought audiences. Her legacy remains one of resilience and quiet generosity, remembered not for excess, but for standing strong while everything was slipping away. Mari Morrow as Desiree Littlejohn. Mari Morrow was born on February 18, 1974, in Miami, Florida, United States. At 25 years old, she played Desiree Des Littlejohn, Nikki's confident friend and early campus ally in The Parkers, 1999. Desiree helped establish the show's social world in its first season, grounding Nikki's larger-than-life energy in adult friendships and rivalry. Behind the scenes, relationships proved far less stable. Morrow married businessman Carl Johnson in 1994, but the marriage collapsed in 1997, leaving her to navigate single motherhood and emotional fallout just as her television visibility peaked. While roles on Family Matters and later appearances after The Parkers kept her recognizable, the strain of sustaining momentum without long-term contracts quietly reshaped both her career confidence and personal life. Professional uncertainty eventually became emotional pressure. As acting opportunities narrowed to smaller projects such as Uninvited Guest and later appearances like Child Support, Morrow faced stress tied to reinvention rather than illness. The shift away from steady screen work forced difficult choices about identity, income, and stability, turning ambition into calculation rather than instinct. By 2026, Mari Morrow is 52 years old and works primarily as a real estate agent in Los Angeles, acting only occasionally. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, built from years of television work and her second career in real estate, her life today reflects adaptation rather than retreat, quietly moving forward after the spotlight dimmed. Thomas Mikal Ford as Mel Parker. Thomas Mikal Ford was born on September 5, 1964, in Los Angeles, California, United States. At 35 years old, he played Mel Parker, Nikki's unreliable ex-husband and Kim's absent father in The Parkers, 1999. Mel's presence added emotional tension to the series, revealing the unresolved wounds beneath Nikki's humor and independence. Off-screen, marriage carried its own weight. Ford married Gina Sasso in 1997, and they shared 2 children, but years of professional travel, pressure, and changing priorities strained the relationship until their divorce in 2014. Even as he remained widely recognized from Martin and continued television work beyond the Parkers, personal stability proved increasingly fragile. Health would become the final turning point. Ford suffered from an abdominal aneurysm that went undetected as he continued working, including directing and community-focused projects late in life. The condition worsened suddenly, cutting short plans and responsibilities that extended beyond acting into mentoring and nonprofit work. Thomas Mikal Ford died on October 12, 2016, at the age of 52, from a ruptured abdominal aneurysm at a hospital in the Atlanta area. He was laid to rest privately, leaving behind an estimated net worth of around $2 million and a legacy defined not only by laughter on screen, but by the abrupt silence that followed. Paulette Braxton, as Veronica Cooper. Paulette Braxton was born on January 31, 1965, in Houston, Texas, United States. At 34 years old, she played Veronica Cooper, Nikki Parker's sharp-tongued romantic rival in The Parkers, 1999. Veronica's confrontational presence intensified Nikki's storylines, adding rivalry and tension that pushed the sitcom's humor into more competitive adult territory. Off-screen, her personal life carried quieter strain. Braxton married Wadsworth Braxton, but the relationship was marked by long-term family tension and emotional distance rather than public scandal. As her visibility grew through television work like In the House and recurring appearances surrounding the Parkers, the challenge of balancing marriage with an unpredictable acting career gradually weighed on her private stability. Professionally, pressure replaced momentum. While she remained active through projects such as A Night at the Roxbury and later television appearances, leading roles became scarce, forcing her to navigate the uncertainty common to character actors once a defining series ends. There were no publicly known major illnesses, but sustained career stress shaped her trajectory more than any single setback. By 2026, Paulette Braxton is 61 years old and lives largely outside the spotlight, with only occasional acting work. Her estimated net worth of around $1 million reflects steady television employment rather than breakout stardom, closing a career shaped by persistence, rivalry roles, and quiet endurance. Kym Whitley as Gertie Lowe. Kym Whitley was born on July 21, 1961, in Shaker Heights, Ohio, United States. At 40 years old, she played Gertie Lowe, Nikki's unpredictable, outspoken acquaintance in The Parkers, 1999. Gertie's exaggerated humor injected volatility into the series, often amplifying chaos during key ensemble moments. Away from the set, emotional struggle centered on family rather than romance. Whitley never married, but her deep desire for motherhood clashed with infertility, a loss she later described as quietly devastating. As her career expanded through films like Next Friday and later television success, including Young and Hungry, the contrast between public laughter and private grief became increasingly stark. That emotional weight shaped her health and choices. Though she did not face major physical illness, the psychological toll of infertility and prolonged career pressure influenced her decision to adopt a son, a turning point that reshaped her sense of purpose. Parenthood became a stabilizing force, redirecting energy that had once been consumed by professional uncertainty. In 2026, Kym Whitley is 65 years old and remains active in acting, stand-up comedy, and producing. With an estimated net worth of around $3.5 million, she stands as a figure of late-career resilience, still visible, still working, and emotionally redefined by the family she built on her own terms. Lamont Bentley, as Hakeem Campbell. Lamont Bentley was born on October 25, 1973, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, United States. At 26 years old, he played Hakeem Campbell, the lovable, eternally hungry friend in The Parkers, 1999. Hakeem's warmth and humor carried over from Moesha, giving the spin-off continuity and emotional familiarity that audiences immediately embraced. His personal life remained largely private, but responsibility came early. Bentley never married publicly, yet he was a father to 2 daughters, navigating parenthood while balancing a demanding career. As his popularity grew through Moesha and The Parkers, he pursued additional work in films like Tales from the Hood and The Wash, determined to expand beyond sitcom identity. That drive ended abruptly. Bentley continued working while exploring music and dramatic roles, including portraying Tupac Shakur in a television biopic when his life was cut short in a violent car accident. The sudden loss shocked colleagues and fans, freezing a career still in motion and ambitions left unfinished. Lamont Bentley died on January 19, 2005, at the age of 31, from multiple blunt force injuries sustained in a single-car crash in Ventura County, California. He was buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills, leaving behind an estimated net worth of around $500,000 and a legacy defined by warmth, promise, and a life ended far too soon. Suzanne Douglas as Constance McFarland. Suzanne Douglas was born on April 12, 1957, in Chicago, Illinois, United States. At 42 years old, she played Constance McFarland, a composed, authoritative presence in The Parkers. Her calm intensity added dramatic contrast to the show's heightened comedy, reinforcing its adult emotional stakes without overpowering the ensemble. That poise was shaped by a life that demanded endurance. Douglas married Roy Jonathan Cobb, and their partnership remained intact through decades of professional travel and pressure, offering stability as her career expanded across film and television. While audiences knew her from The Parent 'Hood and acclaimed performances like Tap, the constant movement between stage, screen, and guest roles required sustained discipline that tested even a steady marriage. Illness later rewrote the rhythm of her life. Douglas battled pancreatic cancer privately for nearly 2 years, continuing to work selectively and remain engaged with her community as the disease advanced. The physical toll was severe, yet she remained professionally visible through respected projects that underscored her range and commitment, even as her health steadily declined. Suzanne Douglas died on July 6, 2021, at the age of 64, from pancreatic cancer, passing away at her home in Martha's Vineyard. She left behind an estimated net worth of around $2 million, a reflection of a career built on craft, longevity, and quiet excellence rather than spectacle. Nancy Wilson as Aunt Rita. Nancy Wilson was born on February 20, 1937, in Chillicothe, Ohio, United States. At 64 years old, she played Aunt Rita, a dignified, sharp-witted elder in The Parkers, 2001. Her appearance carried the weight of musical royalty, lending gravitas and warmth that subtly elevated the sitcom's generational texture. Long before television, marriage and fame collided with ambition. Wilson married Kenny Dennis in 1960, a union that ended in divorce as her recording career surged, then found lasting partnership with Reverend Wiley Murray Burton, Jr. in 1973. While albums like How Glad I Am and decades of touring defined her public legacy, the strain of balancing family life with constant performance left emotional scars that never fully disappeared. Health challenges arrived after a lifetime on stage. Following years of continued recording and public appearances, Wilson faced kidney cancer, a diagnosis that gradually narrowed her world after she had already stepped back from live performance. The illness progressed quietly, closing the final chapter of a career that had spanned genres, generations, and multiple Grammy wins. Nancy Wilson died on December 13, 2018, at the age of 81, from kidney cancer, passing away in Pioneertown, California. She left behind an estimated net worth of around $4 million and a legacy defined not only by awards, but by a voice that outlived the stage and lingered long after the final note. Isabel Sanford, as Evelyn Nana Smith. Isabel Sanford was born on August 29, 1917, in New York City, United States. At 84 years old, she played Evelyn Nana Smith, the sharp-tongued, old-school matriarch in The Parkers, 2001. Her brief presence carried enormous symbolic weight, linking the sitcom to an earlier golden age of black television and grounding its comedy in lived generational authority. That authority was forged through a turbulent marriage and relentless responsibility. Sanford married William Edward Sonny Richmond in 1945, and they had 3 children, but the relationship was marked by instability and domestic conflict. In 1960, she made a life-altering decision to leave the marriage and move to Los Angeles with her children, a break that coincided with her rise in television through All in the Family and, most famously, The Jeffersons, where success came at the cost of emotional exhaustion. Health complications emerged late, after decades of work. Following preventive carotid artery surgery in 2003, Sanford's condition gradually declined, her heart weakened by age and medical stress. Even as her legacy was reaffirmed through honors and late career appearances, her body could no longer sustain the pace of a life spent surviving first and resting last. Isabel Sanford died on July 9, 2004, at the age of 86, from heart failure following post-surgical complications. She was buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, Hollywood Hills, leaving behind an estimated net worth of around $3 million and a historic legacy as one of television's most enduring and hard-won voices. The laughter may still feel familiar, but the lives behind the Parkers tell a far heavier story. Fame brought joy, but for many it also came with loss, illness, broken marriages, and quiet disappearances from the spotlight. Which cast member's journey shocked you the most? And whose story do you think deserves to be told in full next? If you want more, then and now, stories with the truth behind the laughter, like the video, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next.